Alright, Eagles football is back, and we certainly had a crazy unexpected finish, with the Birds fortunately coming away with the dub. Having said that, there were multiple winners on both sides of the ball, like Trotter Jr. and Kelee Ringo locking down receivers, plus Jalyx Hunt's about to play more than we might have expected. However, which guys on the defense may now be on the hot seat? Also on the offensive side, Britt and Covey guaranteed his roster spot, and the running backs were dominant as Mekhi Becton may have locked up the right guard spot, although QB2 is still in question. So let's talk about all the competition updates after the action, but first, let's run it. What's up, guys? So football was back, and obviously we'll get into the game recap and breaking all that down, but first let's start with Nick Foles, as the Eagles announced that the Philly GOAT will officially retire from the NFL when he returns to Philly for the Week 2 matchup on Monday Night Football in the home opener versus the Falcons. Which, come on, only feels right considering that's where the Super Bowl run and playoff underdog mentality started. So it's no surprise Mr. BDN feels the same way.
Specifically, thank you to the Philadelphia Eagles fans. Thank you for all your support from 2012 when I was drafted to 2017 when I came back. You truly made playing in Philadelphia the most special experience in my football career.
Yeah, it was no doubt special. Heck, that's why he's got a statue out front for the iconic Philly special play in the Super Bowl. Like, sure, you never forget the Super Bowl, but that moment specifically will always be ingrained in my head for where I was and how I felt. Seriously, the whole inspiration for this channel is due to St. Nick's play in the Super Bowl, so it only feels right to do another giveaway. Since again, it's literally the name of the channel. Just do me a favor, as always, and hit that like button, and then after dropping a like, go on down to the comments and enter Philly Special, where I'll select one lucky commenter during my live stream on August 20th via the randomized spinner to win 2 Eagles tickets to the Nick Foles retirement game on September 16th. Also, kind of a given, but just make sure to hit that subscribe button as well so you can get in on the giveaway. But speaking of giveaways, most of y'all already know this. We're going to be giving away this bad boy as soon as the channel hits 75,000 subscribers, but if you didn't know, well, now you know now. And we're almost 5,000 subs away, which is kind of hard to believe, just like it had to be a surreal feeling for my guy Zay, who posted before the Ravens game that it's been 19 months or 85 weeks or 592 days since he ran out of an NFL tunnel. So yeah, no doubt a very special day. I mean, heck, we got Eagles football back, with a little trip to Baltimore, and honestly, no amount of rain was going to put a damper on the mood. Well, actually, I say that, but it was the weather that caused Nick Sirianni to think twice about playing the starters for a series, despite initial reports that the Birds would be playing their starters at M&T Bank Stadium, which certainly looked that way as we were watching warm-ups, with Jalen Hurts making his way onto the field, and then so did Saquon Barkley. Also, I get it, seeing the warm-ups of Jalen handing the ball to Saquon is pretty much unreal, so it's understandable for all the "I'm dreaming" comments. And while it's hilarious to still see the mini freakouts over Saquon in the midnight green, I'm also totally right there with you. Yet unfortunately, or maybe fortunately depending on how you feel, we didn't actually get to see those starters because, again, like I said, Sirianni didn't feel comfortable putting them out there with a chance of precipitation or the rain or anything like that. Except for Mekhi Becton, who ended up seeing one series and a variety of guys fighting for that wide receiver 3 spot. Although on the right guard topic, personally, it was very telling to see Mekhi Becton getting only one series and then getting pulled. At which point Tyler Steen entered and played fairly well, however, considering the fact that he was in for basically an entire half despite visibly favoring his ankle on every play, doesn't necessarily speak to the confidence Stout has for him over Becton. Of course, yes, there's still a month until the season starts, but barring injury, it does feel like Becton has the job. Anyway, getting back to the game, Kenny Pickett in the offense actually got out to a decent start, with a screen pass to Britt and Covey. Granted, I'm with those of you who have PTSD from screen plays, but remember, this is the preseason, so it's going to be a little vanilla. Anyway, the next pass was to big target Johnny Wilson on a slant for his first catch as an Eagle. Naturally, Johnny had a lot of hype coming in, especially since he'd been getting a ton of first-team reps in practice, so no surprise to see the Birds get him involved early. And it seemed like Philly would just march all the way down the field, except after a couple strong Kenny Gainwell runs following some Mekhi Becton blocks, the offense moved backwards on a penalty, and eventually Kenny Pickett underthrew John Ross to bring up 4th down. Now, it certainly wasn't the best play from Pickett, but kudos to Nate Wiggins because the Baltimore corner was putting the clamps on people most of the night. So then, with a turnover, much like the Eagles' first offensive drive, Baltimore started out moving the football. Of course, that was against just about every defensive starter, with only BG, Josh Sweat, and Slay being the ones to sit out. Because even though Sirianni didn't start the offensive guys, well, Vic Fangio had, different plans.
It's not the way it's going to work.
Yes, it is.
No, it is not.
No, it is not.
Come on, we all saw that one coming though, since Vic had talked about previously getting the guys as many reps as possible. Granted, let's just say it wasn't the start the new DC hoped for, as they gave up a big run on 1st down, followed by a Josh Johnson short pass to Owen Wright, where Quinyon Mitchell might have gotten mixed up or there was a miscommunication with the linebackers. Either way, Baltimore picked up 17 yards on the play to get to the Philly 29. But then the defense locked in, getting it to 3rd and 10 where Q made sure to make his presence felt too, nearly coming up with an interception while flashing that premier ball hawk ability we've all been hearing about from camp. Although sure, just like we were all thinking, he probably should have made the pick.
I wanted him to finish that.
we're gonna talk about that. Like, that I've seen him finish that. But it was a good breakup on a third down to, stop that drive. So I noticed that play. Sometimes with corners, when you don't notice them, it's a good thing, right? And so I didn't notice them quite as much out there, and so maybe that was a good thing. I'll wait till I watch the tape. I got a long bus ride home to be able to watch the offense, defense, and special teams. And but to get anytime a defensive back gets a big stop like that on a third down, like, that's exciting. And that's the stuff that he showed when he was in college.
Yeah, he dropped 1-2. I told him he dropping money, and like, what he got going on. Like, I told all y'all boys, y'all tripping. Y'all dropping too much money out there today. Now, come on, gotta get these plays. But they all played amazing today, man. They you can see the sticky coverage, but the guys are making plays.
Again, would the interception have been nice? Sure, but at least they got the stop. And honestly, the even better storyline is like what Ruben Frank pointed out, saying the Ravens picked up 29 yards on their first 2 plays, but then managed just 82 yards on their next 30 plays through the end of the third quarter, where for 6 out of the next 7 drives, Baltimore couldn't even manage a single first down. At the same time, I realize we're talking about our first-team guys going up against mostly second-team and second-string players, but at least the defense was flying around and hitting people. Anyway, the offense clearly took advantage as Pickett put together his best drive of the night, thanks to a heavy and productive ground attack mainly from Will Shipley, with Rook getting all of his action on one series, racking up 8 touches for 30 yards and a score. However, as impressive as Shipley's runs were, the thing that stood out to me was his blocking. After all, we'd heard reports about his struggles in that area in camp, but thanks to Ship on this one particular play, Pickett was able to step up and hit John Ross for a first down and move the chains. By the way, also, those that have been asking previously, the camp scare we had with John Ross, the injury, turns out to be nothing and he's perfectly fine, so good to go. But getting back to the topic of running back, Shipley was really impressive, which is why it only felt right to cap it off with a 7-yard touchdown reception to tie it up at 6. Although let's be real, there's so many things to take away from that play. First off, look at that. Kenny Pickett under center. Granted, not much of a fake, but just to have motion and then a fake handoff for a pass was really a breath of fresh air. Yet not gonna lie, one of the favorite parts for me was seeing Johnny Wilson's block and willingness to block, which was honestly just one of the many times the Rook showed that physicality. So yeah, the coaches gotta love to see that when they watch it back. And for sure, we'll get him on the field more. But moving forward, after the score, Jake Elliott surprisingly missed the extra point left, keeping the score at 6-all. At which point, I don't know if that was more surprising or the mic incident for those hanging out in the live stream. Regardless, I do want to apologize, and I owe several of you guys a new pair of eardrums.
I can't hear! I can't! There's blood blisters on my head! I need an MRI!
Hopefully, me offering up potential Eagles tickets is a good enough trade-off for the MRI. But seriously, hanging out with y'all during the live stream was a blast, and with the new additions we've made, it's only going to get bigger and better this season. Oh yeah, just like Kelee Ringo's stock, who had a really good coverage on a back shoulder throw the next drive for Baltimore. And then, a few snaps later, the second-year Philly dog broke up a pass in the end zone to prevent a touchdown. And who knows, it wasn't called a flag there, but I'll admit there was a decent amount of contact. However, either way, Ringo was solid. I mean, heck, he had 3 PBUs in the first half, while also constantly having good coverage on a number of other reps. Of course, Ringo is still probably slightly behind Zay based on the usage there, but the battle's still on. But after the stop, Justin Tucker tied the game at 6, and then Pickett started to work the offense down the field a bit, including, by the way, running the brotherly shove on a 4th and 1, which, yeah, they got just a whole lot more difficult than Jalen Hurts running it. But it is safe to say the play isn't going anywhere for those of you speculating. Now, sadly, Tyler Steen was eventually called for a hold that backed up the Birds 10 yards and ultimately killed the drive, which is about where neither team could do much else for the rest of the first half, with the Eagles' punt marking the first of 10 consecutive possessions between the teams without a score. However, despite the offense not faring well, the defense had a few guys that stood out, like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., for example, since the Axeman ended up leading all Eagles in tackles with 6 and was quite literally all over the field. Most notably on the sack of Josh Johnson to force a punt on the ensuing possession, which watching the play back again is incredibly impressive considering he had to get off his block and bring down the quarterback from behind. Seriously, how many times have we seen that play turn into a first down and keep a drive alive? Also, just FYI, but that play ended up being recorded as a sack, so good for him. Plus, let me just say this, the more that I watch of Trotter, I'm starting to feel like it's very realistic that he eventually works himself into the rotation some way, some shape, some form there, but definitely by the middle of the season. Like, I know it's not surprising having watched him in college, but I was curious to see how he'd look in Fangio's scheme. And I don't know, personally, he looked like probably the most instinctual linebacker out of all the guys last night. Of course, this next part might surprise some of you since I'd been down on Nakobe Dean, but I actually thought he played fairly well. I mean, let's get this straight. The dude can certainly blitz. Yet he even showed some improved play and coverage by jarring the ball loose on a pass to Owen Wright. Look, obviously, Dean's playing with a chip on his shoulder, but there you go. For those of you thinking that I couldn't or wouldn't compliment Dean, he deserved it. Also, I realize that Zack Baun had limited reps, and I'm not saying that he's losing his job, but at least for those as far as Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Nakobe Dean, they certainly closed the gap based on their performance. Having said that, how about y'all? Do you agree? And also, having seen the linebackers for the first time in their entirety, what do you feel about that position? And I don't know how you feel, but at least I think we can agree on Jalyx Hunt being very promising, with a rookie edge ending up with 4 tackles while constantly generating pressure on the quarterback, and quite frankly, somewhat overshadowing Nolan Smith, at least for sure in the first half. Like, come on, you gotta be pumped after seeing this year's draft class, or at least most of it. With Jeff Kerr sharing some stats from the first half as Trotter Jr. had a few tackles and a sack, Quinyon Mitchell made the crucial third down pass breakup, Jalyx Hunt had 2 tackles and a few pressures, and Will Shipley, who I mentioned earlier, got 7 carries, 23 yards, 1 reception, 7 yards, and a touchdown. Oh, and also Trevor Keane had a good night as well with 0 pressures allowed in 25 pass blocking snaps. Of course, like I said, while those were some of the bright spots, the offense wasn't nearly as good, with Britton Covey being just about the only positive of the latter half of the first half, where he broke multiple tackles on a punt return, proving once again that he is a lock to make this roster, and I was silly to have ever questioned him in the first place. So yeah, my bad. Way off on that one. Just like I've been way off on my Ainias Smith prediction, at least so far. But for real, the Rook is in a dangerous spot. And honestly, it feels like with every practice and now game, he hasn't been able to improve his stock much, with Anthony DeBona giving him a stock downgrade, citing his lackluster performance on 3 punt returns, including 1 he fumbled, although at least luckily it went out of bounds, and then also struggled to make much of a difference in the receiving game. Yet to be fair, he did make a catch whenever it mattered most, as Tanner McKee ended up finding him late in the 4th on a 3rd and 6 to move the chains. By the way, on the Tanner McKee topic, he was without a doubt the more aggressive of the 2 QBs, as the general consensus is that he outplayed Pickett, or at the very least didn't lose any ground to him for the QB2 spot. Which sure, if you look at the box score, a 37.5% completion percentage looks a little bit strange to say that. But for those of us watching, you know Tanner suffered a few drops, and let's be honest, it's not like he had many guys to throw to. So naturally, I'd like to see what he could do with the chances on the second team. Again, having said that, either way, it was really vanilla. Heck, like Jimmy Kimsky pointed out, the longest reception for anyone on the entire night was 10 yards, as we saw a lot of conservative throws as well as mostly a ton of conservative play calls. But okay, don't worry, let's not freak out. Again, this is the preseason. Kellen Moore's not going to show his hand or tip anyone off there. It's a lot of vanilla offense, and you're just trying to get a couple looks on reps. Anyway, as far as the offensive standouts in the second half, I'd have to give that to the ground game and a few O-linemen, as the Eagles racked up 146 yards thanks to 39 from UDFA Kendall Milton and 34 from Ty Davis Price, which quite honestly, TDP was the best runner of the night, with a former 3rd-round pick showing a good balance of patience and decisiveness to continually get chunk yards and move the chains, leading to several media members, including Ruben Frank and Anthony DeBona, to believe TDP's got a legit chance to make the roster. Plus, let's be honest, watching the game, it's pretty evident that Philly has a really deep, loaded running back room. Now, part of that success was certainly thanks to a solid game from Darian Kennard, as the combo guard tackle reportedly has Jeff Stoutland's attention, making a roster spot just about a lock. And then on defense, despite a much quieter first half, my guy Nolan Smith turned it up in the second, as he ended up getting a sack late in the 3rd quarter by showing that crazy bend and athleticism. Which, by the way, this is what you gotta love about Fangio. He's not gonna blitz a lot, but when he does, it's gonna be times to catch the offense off guard, as Nolan was lined up outside and then came crashing down hard to beat his man and get the sack. Yet sure, that wasn't your traditional lineup and rush, but still, the fact that he can get to the quarterback, I don't really care how it looks. Anyway, Nolan also showed that hustle and work ethic by getting to a screenplay on the opposite side, which you gotta love to see, as well as that constant ability in the run game too. Again, I realize it's just preseason and a lot of 2nd team and 3rd team guys, but we're just talking about the positives here. Of course, the other guy I'd have to mention here is Tristan McCollum, since there's definitely a safety depth question, but McCollum was everywhere, and I might argue the most physical, or at least one of the most physical on the defense. Plus, considering Mekhi Gardner is out with a hamstring injury, there's definitely a possibility that the Eagles just look at him as the 4th backup. Especially since Justin Simmons apparently does not have a good relationship with Vic Fangio, and that whole acquisition feels dead in the water. Kinda like my parlay last night after Jake Elliott missed a game winner from 50. Yet thankfully, all of us who took Philly minus 2.5 were relieved when Patrick Johnson made the play of the night to strip sack Emory Jones, and give Jake one more opportunity at the game winner, which of course, there's no doubt he was going to make that one. Although going back to Patrick Johnson's sack, we probably should have seen that one coming too. Because shout out to Andrew DeCecco, who called him Mr. Relentless, as the 4th-year player ended up putting on 10 pounds of muscle this offseason while also reducing his body fat percentage. Something that has certainly paid dividends.
My get off has really improved, but really just my hand and my technique with my hands. Basically being able to use my hands even after the first rush, and if I don't win on the first one, I'm making sure I have a backup plan, and also just my plan B, my counters and stuff like that. I feel like I've really improved on.
Well, we definitely saw it, and we saw it from several guys trying to make a name for themselves, but I know it's only one preseason game in, but who were your biggest winners and losers from the game in Baltimore? Also, for those curious on the schedule, next up for the Eagles is a practice on Sunday, followed by a joint practice with New England on Tuesday, and then another game on Thursday. Which, as always, I'll have recaps and updates and takeaways and everything else from practice each day, as well as the joint practices. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, turn the notifications on so you don't miss anything. Until next time, this has been the Philly Special.